Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So today we are going to start something which is very important for a chemistry class, and that is the Gibbs free energy. We had discussed the various four fundamental equations, and we had derived the Maxwell's relation from the four equation thermodynamic fundamental equation. Then we found out in the last class two additional thermodynamic equation of state, where we had variation of internal energy with volume at constant temperature and the variation of enthalpy with pressure at constant temperature. We had nomenclated this, or this is known as the change of the internal energy with volume at constant temperature. We call that as internal pressure, and the other is isothermal Joule-Thomson coefficient. So these two expressions derived from Maxwell's relation give you the two more thermodynamic equation of state, and from there we had proved for ideal gas the internal pressure as well as the enthalpy isothermal Joule-Thomson coefficient, both will be equal to 0. If I plug in the equation and use the Maxwell's relation to simplify in terms of temperature, pressure and volume, then we can compute the values using an ideal gas equation, PV equal to nRT, and then we found out the value to be 0. And for van der Waals gas, we had said that it is not 0, and the value which we had calculated is, yeah, we can see it now. So the value which we had calculated for a van der Waals gas, typical for 1 mole of gas, we had taken what will be the internal pressure, and internal pressure was supposed to be related to the volume correction, which is A by V, the molar volume square. So this was what we had derived in the last class, and we went through the various expressions I had asked you to do and practice. So we are going to start with what is Gibbs free energy and how it's going to depend on the various thermodynamic parameters. Because Gibbs free energy gives you the direction, it is one of the most important expressions, because we deal in chemistry, all processes are constant pressure processes, because we do the reactions under atmospheric pressure, and which is a constant. So for a reaction, whether it is spontaneous or not, we, instead of going for the Helmholtz energy, we go for the Gibbs energy to find out the spontaneity of the process, because if you have Helmholtz energy, you need to have the process carried out at constant volume, which is not very easy to do, but we can do. But the most relevant thing which you are doing whenever you are doing an experiment in the lab or carrying out a reaction, you are doing it in under atmospheric pressure. So pressure, delta G is important in that sense. So this, which you can see, G equal to H minus Ts, this is the basic definition of G that we had taken when we are talking about the spontaneity conditions. We had found out and defined this expression as the G. This is a definition. Like we had a definition for enthalpy, we had a definition for Helmholtz energy. Similarly, we have a definition for the Gibbs energy. Gibbs energy by definition is H minus Ts, and had it been Helmholtz, it would have been U minus Ts. Okay. So if I differentiate that at constant temperature, then I can get delta G equal to delta H minus T delta S, a standard expression which you are very much familiar with. Now compare that with the expressions of the four fundamental equations we have derived. We have an expression for delta G as well. And what is that expression? It is delta G equal to VdP minus S delta T. So if I compare these two equations, you can see what is from here, what is S? S is nothing but G minus H by T, right? This is what it is. And when you are talking about from the fundamental equation, what happens when you are having temperature constant? From this expression, if the temperature is constant, delta G is nothing but sorry, when you are when you are differentiating with temperature, the delta G at constant pressure, then what is it? From here you can make out constant pressure means this is going to vanish, so it's going to be minus S. So if I consider the two equations, one is the definition of G and another is from the fundamental equation of G. If I combine these two in terms of the minus S parameter, then I can equate them. So I get the equation delta G by T at constant pressure is equal to G minus H by T, right? Now you simplify this. You simplify this. What you take it to G by T to the other side and minus H by T in the right hand side. Now take this as an entity, like G by T you take as an entity and differentiate that with respect to temperature at constant pressure. If you do that, you are differentiating G by T with temperature at constant pressure. What do you get? You differentiate G by T. How do you do it? 1 by T, G by T at constant pressure minus you now differentiate with respect to temperature, G by T square. This is what it is going to come to, right? All of you. Now, what I have, if I compare these two equations, if I take the term out for G by T at constant pressure minus G by T, what is this side I can take T here, multiply by T here, take it here. Taking T common, I can take T this side. Then what do I have? G by T at constant pressure minus G by T. Delta G by T at constant pressure minus G by T. I have taken T common and taken this to this side. Okay. Now, if you now compare, if I take T common and take it to this side, then you can see what you have here is this expression G by delta G by T at constant pressure minus G by T. Now substitute that in this. Okay, in this you have substitute this part of the equation. You substitute 4 in the in 5. What do you get? What is that going to come to? You see, this is nothing but this entire thing is what you are having here. So what is it that going to be? It will be H by T square, right? If I take T common and simplify. So what I get H by T and the T which is common was now going to be multiplied from here. I can take it to this side. So it will be G by T square to T square. So this is a very important equation. This is a very important equation. This is known as the Gibbs-Helmholtz equation. What is the Gibbs-Helmholtz equation giving us? It is, if I substitute this, see, what did I get? I got H by T square, right? Minus H by T square. Am I clear how we got it? Can you do it yourself? Some of you say yes or no.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
All of you got it? You just take the simplification of this side. You just simplify this so that it becomes equal to whatever you have here. So, and you can then substitute in that place, you can substitute H by T. And if you take 1 by T common, then it is going to be minus H by T multiplied by 1 by T. So, it is going to come as minus H by T square. Right. So, what we have, why it is important, what we are doing here, we are finding out how the G by T, the Gibbs energy variation with temperature, how the entire thing is varying with temperature at constant pressure. So we can apply this for a reaction. For this, we have the reactant and product in the chemical reaction. So for that, we instead of H, we can write down delta H. So another form, alternate form is you can instead of writing G by T with respect to T, you can also differentiate G by T with by T. And then what happens if it is 1 by T, then the H, it is going to be a plus sign will come and the T square will vanish. So it will be equal to H, right? So if these are the two variations of the Gibbs-Helmholtz energy. These are two ways we can write. One, we can write how the Gibbs energy for a system is with temperature variation is that quantity differentiated with time, temperature at constant pressure. This is what we are looking into. Now for a reaction, what do you have? For a reaction, you have both the reactant and product of the chemical reaction. So if I apply the Gibbs-Helmholtz for that, then what I have is the delta H for that process, for that reaction. So if I write down the delta H of the reaction, so this side becomes, right hand side becomes the delta H, and what is going to be here, instead of G, I will write down delta G by T with variation in temperature at constant pressure. So this is this whenever we are writing a delta sign, that means you are applying that to a reaction for which you know the reactant and product. So the delta H is the product, delta H of the product minus the reactant. So you can find out the value of delta H. Okay. So now we can look at how the details of it, how that graph is going to look like. From the fundamental definition, what we have delta G equal to V delta P minus S delta T. When I am talking about a process being carried out at constant pressure, we have found out how it is going to depend, how it is depending on temperature when the pressure is remaining constant. So now if I want to find out what is going to be delta G with pressure, what is it going to be measured, or with temperature what is going to be measured? With temperature, if I am doing a calculation, sorry, if I am doing a expression which with variation of temperature, then I have delta G with respect to variation in temperature. At that time we keep the pressure constant as per the thermodynamic application of the partial differential. So if I can do that, what will that be a measure of? It will be a measure of the entropy of the system with a negative sign for that particular reaction if I talk about, right? Similarly, if I have from the Helmholtz equation, this is from the fundamental equation. From the Helmholtz equation, what we have not the delta G, but how the delta G with T is varying with temperature at constant pressure, and that is related to a change in enthalpy of the process. That means this is a parameter which can be easily evaluated when we are doing an experiment. Therefore, the change in entropy, or more commonly which is used, enthalpy, can be used to show how the Gibbs energy varies with temperature in a reaction. Suppose I have delta G versus T plotted against temperature. This is what we are meaning, that we are looking into the variation of delta G by T for a reaction when there is change in temperature. So this is how we are going to plot. Now, if this is going to be a plot, and I say the delta G, the reaction is spontaneous and the reaction is exothermic, then how will the plot look like? Will it be an increasing slope like this, or have I drawn it wrong? Will it be the increasing slope like this, or have I done it wrong because I have a minus sign?
It is correct because it is an exothermic reaction, so delta H will be negative.
Yes. So if it is what will be the slope?
As it is written, it will be minus of delta H by T square.
So if it is exothermic, what will that become? It will become positive?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
The slope becomes positive because the slope is supposed to be minus delta H by T square. And if it's an exothermic process, then the value should be positive. So it's a positive slope you are going to get. So any spontaneous process, if it is an exothermic reaction, then the slope should be looking something like this for G by T versus T. Okay. Now, what happens if it's an endothermic reaction? How will the slope look like? The slope will be something like this. It will be like this. So if the slope is like this, if the slope is like this, that means the value slope of the value of the slope will be what? Minus delta H by T
Negative.
square. Yes, negative, right? So we can make out from this, when you are having very negative values of delta G. If I have very negative values to very high less negative values, this is the scale of delta G we are looking into, because we want to have a delta G which is supposed to be spontaneous. That means the delta G is supposed to be negative. Okay, so for a negative value, how will the plot look like if it's exothermic, and how it should be looking like when it is an endothermic plot? Now, if you just take the other form of the Gibbs-Helmholtz equation, what is that? We are talking about delta G, a change of delta G by T with respect to 1 by T. That is equal to the measure of delta H, right? So if I have a plot like this for a process which is say exothermic, if it's a plot of exothermic, then G by T versus 1 by T, how will the plot look like? It has to be something like this, because delta G should be then negative, because this is supposed to be just a measure of the delta G of the reaction, right? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
And because it is 1 by T, this is where we are having high T, and this is where we are having a low T. Can we say something from this about the Le Chatelier's principle? Any one of you? When we are having a variation with respect to 1 by T and T, where when pressure is held constant for a spontaneous process? Anybody? We know that for a spontaneous process, delta G is negative, right? So I had once asked you that if the delta G is negative, but the expression or the reaction is exothermic, will that be spontaneous or not? You remember? So now in that light, how do we explain that if you have a negative heat of reaction or enthalpy of change, which is supposed to be exothermic in nature, that means you have a minus delta H, will that process be spontaneous?
If delta G is negative, then it will be spontaneous, and it will depend on the value of change in entropy, whether it is positive or negative.
It's going to depend on the change on the entropy, whether it's going to be positive or negative. How will that make any sense?
We can use the equation delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S, and we know that delta H is negative. So if delta S,
that means what happens? What is important there? That is, there's a temperature term which is important.
Temperature.
So the deciding factor is the temperature. That is why I have written this side is high temperature, this side is low temperature. Understood? So the temperature is going to be deciding factor whether the reaction is going to be spontaneous or not, because the H by T delta H by delta S should be greater than or less than the T. We have done that in the last class.
Yes, ma'am. In a exothermic reaction, if we want a forward reaction, we should decrease the temperature, or the temperature must be very low.
Exactly. The temperature must be very low, and this side is a higher value of 1 by T, means this side is lower value of temperature. That is what is the Le Chatelier's principle, right? You just now stated. When you have a exothermic reaction held at constant pressure, the reaction will proceed towards the side where the temperature is decreased, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm?
Yes, ma'am. And opposite in the case of endothermic reaction.
Yes.
We have to increase the temperature for a forward reaction.
So you can justify that from this plot now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now if you have understood what we were talking about, now we can move as to how the Gibbs energy is going to change with pressure. Again, we have this fundamental equation. I am talking about change in G with respect to pressure. That time what I hold constant, I hold the temperature as constant. So if I hold the temperature as constant, the G by P at constant pressure temperature is what is the value measure of the volume of the system. Okay. So if I go ahead and rewrite this, I can write instead of the differential form, I can write delta G equal to VdP. And if I carry out a process, say at constant temperature, that means an isothermal process, what I can say, I can integrate this from the initial pressure to the final pressure and integrate this to initial pressure to final pressure, right? And what will that be? Since G is a state function, it will be G final minus G initial, right? So the G final minus G initial will be equal to integral of P initial to P final VdP. Now, if you're doing it for a gas, you leave it and you do the calculation and put the, if you are using an equation of state, then you can find out what the expression for V is, and you can put the differentiate with respect to pressure. But for a solid or a liquid, what happens? The volume change is going to be very small with change in this small amount of pressure. You need a huge amount of pressure to have a significant amount of change in solid and liquid volume, because they are almost incompressible. So for that, what we can say, the change in the volume is so insignificant that we can just ignore the change in volume and just concentrate on the change in pressure from the initial to the final. This is what is, you can look at, this is a diagram drawn for the volume at various conditions of pressure. The dark line is the actual volume, and when you have the constant temperature process, this is going to be the line which you are going to get. This is the area which you are going to get. So the difference is negligible, and you can, for all practical purpose, you can neglect it. So for that reason, when we are seeing here, we were looking into a variation of V as well for the gas. But when we are talking about a solid or a liquid, we can ignore this change in volume and keep the V constant and just take the difference between the two pressures, initial pressure, final pressure minus the initial pressure. So they are almost equal to be writing like this. So for a solid and liquid, since they are incompressible liquid, the volume change is so insignificant that we can virtually keep that as constant and only take the difference between the final pressure and the initial pressure. Now, if the entire process is being done at isothermal condition, that means the temperature is held constant. Now, if I have a gas and I'm doing the same thing for ideal gas, and the process is isothermal, then what happens? I replace the V instead of V, I can write nRT by P, and nRT by P, if you are taking the P into consideration, because you are changing the looking into the change in the process in terms of dP. So you have, what do you have? nRT will be outside, which is constant, and you will have the integration of dP by P from initial to final. Okay, so if you are writing this in the formula which is given right now in the yellow, is Gibbs energy at a pressure is equal to nothing but the Gibbs free energy at standard state plus nRT ln P by P naught. That means what I have here this P naught and this one is the standard condition which we are defining. From this expression, am I clear? I've written down the general expression of delta G change for any process carried out at constant temperature. And from the fundamental equation, we have got the change in G with respect to P at constant temperature is the measure of the volume. So I can rewrite that into change in G being equal to volume into the change in pressure. And if I do a process which is carried out very slowly and in the isothermal process, what I can do is integrate the G from the initial pressure to the final pressure and integrate VdP from initial pressure to the final pressure, and whatever, since G is a state variable, you will have always the delta G as the discrete between delta G final minus delta G initial and plus the integration of VdP between the volume and pressure changing from P1 to the P2 final or Pi to PF final. But when you are having a solid or a liquid where they are almost incompressible, there is no change with respect to the pressure which you are having here. So we can rewrite that in terms of the final pressure being final G of that corresponding to the system being equal to the G at the initial plus the volume volume into the pressure change between the initial to the final. This is going to be only valid when you are having a solid and liquid. But if you are having a gas, then this is what we are going to use. And here we have replaced by the inert gas equation. And if I replace the inert gas equation, this should be my side. This expression nRT ln P2 minus P1, where P2 is the final pressure, P1 is the initial pressure. Here we have said it is Pi and Pf. Now, what I say when I write this equation in terms of the G naught, that means the standard state is what we are defining. This will, if this is D naught, G naught, this is going to be P naught. And what is P naught? Standard pressure is defined as at 1 bar. So if there is nothing written, if G is written to be at a pressure, given pressure is equal to G naught plus nRT nRT ln P only, that means the denominator is not written because it is 1 bar. Okay, am I clear? In this expression, this is the P naught, this is the P you are measuring. P naught for all practical purposes, when it is going to be defined at P equal to 1 bar, and G naught is the standard Gibbs free energy. So this is the standard Gibbs free energy, and P naught is the pressure corresponding to that state where pressure equal to initial pressure is equal to 1 bar. So the standard Gibbs energy, how it's going to vary with temperature, we can do that. But what is standard Gibbs energy? Have you any clue what is standard Gibbs energy? Standard Gibbs energy is the free energy change accompany the formation of the compound from its elemental state. So whenever we are talking about, I had shown this slide, probably I had not mentioned in great detail that what is delta G naught. We will see that this delta G naught is can be related to the electromotive forces EMF when you are talking about electrochemical cell. So what is this G naught defined as? G naught is defined as the free energy change associated or accompanying the formation of a compound from its elemental state. From elemental state, if you have any formation, that these are handbook values, you can get it from a handbook. Okay, but that if it is there in the handbooks, that means somebody has calculated. And if that is calculated, how it's calculated is what I am trying to emphasize. So the standard Gibbs free energy is always the free energy accompanying the formation of the compound, whatever compound it may be, from its elemental state when all the reactant and products are there in their standard states. Only then you can compare. You cannot compare potatoes and tomatoes. You have to compare them similar things in one section. So if you are talking about the free energy change associated with formation of the compound from the elemental state, when all the reactants or products are in their standard state. All the compound and product which you are dealing will are remaining in their standard state. Usually we do not do it. You do not even write P naught. We just take delta G equal to nRT ln P. This is a standard way of writing, because P by P naught is actually the same, because P naught is always defined at 1 bar pressure. Okay, because that's the standard pressure. So if I rewrite that, you have a look at this. We have already done here. This is the expression which we are using is the same expression we are having here. The same expression we are using here. So here we are writing P1 and making notation of the temperature as well as the pressure associated with the process. Here we have to remember the pressure in this form of the reaction may be dropped at times, because this P naught is actually 1 bar. Okay. So if I have to write this in any other form, then I can write down P by P naught into, for 1 mole of gas, RT ln P by P naught plus the Gibbs energy of that particular reaction at the conditions where you have the formation from the elemental state. Okay. Now, this is what I was talking about. This is what I was talking about. Sorry. Oh. This is what I was talking about. This is the equation I was talking about. At times we write the delta G in terms of delta G naught plus RT ln P. This does not mean that the denominator P is not existing. Denominator P being 1, it is going to be ignored. Okay. So if you go from here, what you have, what the crux of the discussion today was, the G by T, when it's change in Gibbs energy with temperature at constant pressure, is the measure of the decrease in entropy of the system, minus S is there. And how do they write down the entropy? Entropy is going to be a function of the temperature plus or minus R ln P. Okay, from here we can get, instead of the G, if we put S naught, instead of G naught, if we write S naught, then also we can express in terms of the entropy. If I'm expressing in terms of entropy, the Gibbs energy, then what happens? The expression reduces to S naught, molar S naught value at that given temperature will be minus that say gas constant into the ln P, and P is the final pressure which can be found out. So standard Gibbs energy is defined as the free energy change accompanying the formation of a compound from its elemental state when all the reactants and products are in this pure standard states. Only then we can write it while we are doing it. Otherwise, all our experiments are based on only the real system. So we have to make a compromise and understand that this is nothing. It is coming from this expression. Not coming, actually, you can simplify to get this expression. This is G by T at constant pressure. So G by T at constant pressure will be determined by the expressions of entropy and R ln P. Okay. So now let us have a look at why is G so important. Delta G by T at constant pressure is what? Is the measure of the pressure at entropy. You just see. Sorry, I have not pasted the picture. So G by T means you have drawing a slope of G versus temperature, with temperature being in the x-axis independent variable. So that if you know, and another definition you know from the second law, from the say fundamental equation, is change of G with pressure when the temperature is constant will be the measure of the volume of the gas. So now let us write down the various expressions for delta U, and that includes delta G, H equal to G minus TH, H equal to H minus PV. So you can understand, if you are having here, you substitute this value instead of S, you can substitute whatever you have here. You got it? It is becoming boring now to read out all these things.
Ma'am, it is understandable from the equations.
Yes. You keep just substituting the values, and so you can see even the CP value can be calculated from the variation of delta G. So you see, you may be asked to take up and derive it in 2 steps, and it's very simple if you know. So you can find out, if you know G, you can find out a lot of parameters related to a reaction. Now let us look at this. What do we have here? I have the fundamental equation, and I say when I am keeping pressure for a process, when the pressure is constant, G by T, that means differentiation of G with respect to temperature, is the equal to the entropy with a negative sign. So what does this mean? Entropy is not negative. What we are saying, that the G of the system decreases as we increase the temperature. That means the slope is negative, right? Whenever the slope is negative, that will give you a negative sign, and so that negative comes from the decreased of entropy with decrease in G with respect to temperature is going to be what is going to be reflected with a minus sign. Okay, and this minus sign does not represent the entropy is minus. It is meaning that the G is decreasing with increase in pressure, temperature at constant pressure process. So increase in temperature and and G is of a state decreases then with its temperature in T, and it is a measure of the entropy of the state. Understood? Similarly, when you have G variation with pressure, you are going to plot with G versus pressure, then what you get? It is going to be a measure of the molar volume. And what is that? What is that? So delta G versus T is equal to minus S, and delta G versus with respect to pressure at constant temperature is the measure of the molar volume. I am not saying molar, let us say only volume here. Molar we will come to it later. So now let us look at the diagram here. What you have? We have a temperature in the x-axis and G in the y-axis. Each of these curves correspond to various conditions at given pressure. The pressure is constant. So all these graphs are obtained under constant given pressure, constant pressure. So for a gas, what will you expect? The entropy will be high, so the slope will be much more steeper. And what about the liquid? It will. And what about the solid? Solid, the G change with temperature will be very small because it's a measure of the entropy of the system. So the entropy of this entropy change will be very small when we are talking about a solid. So I will almost get a lines parallel to the x-axis. What happens if you have somewhere in between? Please say something.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is understood. The entropy is since the entropy is increasing from solid to gas, so the slope value of the slope is going to be steeper, but the sign will be always negative because from the expression of fundamental equation, G will decrease with increase in temperature according to the fundamental equation. And since that's the measure of the entropy, higher the entropy, more will be the steep the slope is. But the slope sign is going to be negative because it's coming from the expression. It is not, does not mean the entropy is negative, right? Now similarly, what it is? Say, what is G by T? G by P at constant temperature. I said it's a measure of the volume. Usually we say it is molar volume, and then if I say molar volume, I have to say not G, then I have to say chemical potential, because G by P N, the per mole, is actually defined as the chemical potential. So what you see here, this is a positive value, that means increase in temperature will increase the G. Okay, so and it is a measure of the volume of the system, and since gases will be having the highest volume, so their graph will be much more steeper compared to that of the solid and liquid. So this is how the graph is going to be looking for Gibbs energy change with respect to pressure. With respect to pressure, that means you are changing the pressure in each step we are doing. It is the measure of the since it is G by pressure, which is the measure of the volume. That means volume of the gas will be obviously for 1 mole of gas will be much higher than 1 mole of solid or liquid. So you see these are going to be very lower value of slope, but the highest value of slope will that be of gas, because that will correspond to the volume of the gas, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I'm not going to talk about this right now, but we will take up until I introduce chemical potential. I don't want to discuss this. I have this same graph when we are discussing about phase. The discussion is going to continue in the phase equilibrium conditions. So, if I have to see the chemical potential, I have not yet defined chemical potential. What we had seen, the G versus T plot. G versus T plot is this one. G versus T plot is this one, which is the measure of the entropy of the system. So G versus T plot is something like this. And what happens when you are taking all the things into consideration, then you replace the x-axis, let x-axis be whatever it was, you change the y-axis from Gibbs energy to chemical potential, then the matter becomes more relevant, because we are going to do everything per mole when we are doing a studies. So if you just have a look, when you have 3 phases, solid, liquid and gas, the chemical potential, which will be equal to the proportional to the delta G change, because delta G per mole is going to be the chemical potential. So the chemical potential will be not since it's a measure of the say entropy. So the gas will be much steeper than that of the liquid and solid. Or am I saying the opposite? Am I saying the opposite? Am I saying the opposite? Just have a look at this and then tell me. Here you have highest value of entropy. So delta G, you are getting into the bus. And what am I talking? Okay, I'm talking rubbish now. Feeling sleepy. So what we have, the delta G is actually the measure of the solid and the liquid and the gas. What I was asking is whether this graph I have done correctly or not. This graph is correct or not. This is coming from which plot? This plot? This plot?
Yes, ma'am.
So how is it different? Solid is different from liquid. Why it is different? Here the gas is the steepest. The gas is the steepest. Here it is exactly the same thing, but here
Yes, ma'am. Just the graph has been like shifted from places.
yeah, what is that shift?
Ma'am, temperature, like temperature, they will
So
change the phase.
we are not going to have the gas, liquid and solids existing in the same temperature, right? If I have one system, say I have water, I cannot say gas, liquid and solid are going to be there in this temperature. So if I have to have a solid, then I have to go to liquid and then I have to go to gas, right?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
this is the general pictorial representation as to show that the gas will have the maximum fall in the Gibbs free energy when you are increasing the temperature. But when you are increasing the temperature, all these phases may not be in the existing in the same stage. First, it will be in the solid. If I have only one material which is present, one phase is present, and then what happens? You have a point where you have the freezing or melting, right? Here you have here the melting of the ice, and then it becomes liquid. The slope is value is the same. You see the same slope trend is going to be there, but only the thing you have to understand is that when I have to have an excess in absolute terms of temperature of boiling, temperature of freezing, then this will be the temperature of freezing and this will be the temperature of boiling. So this is just the translation of the previous plot in accordance with for a particular system or any pure substance when we appropriately identify the temperatures of boiling point and freezing point. Clear? That is why graph is different. Otherwise, it does not matter whether I am writing chemical potential or the Gibbs energy. They are going to be having the same scaling up if we are doing the Gibbs energy or the chemical potential. But if we before we go into the chemical potential, we need to enter the concept of open system. What is the open system? So far we have said that we are not having any exchange of matter with system and surrounding, and according to that the Gibbs equation, fundamental equation of Gibbs energy will be given as delta G equal to minus S delta T plus VTP. Now the limitations of this fundamental equation in the form which we have is that we are not accounting for any composition change. This equation is not applicable when there is a change in the composition of the system. This is only possible when you have a closed system and we have a single component system. Okay, we cannot have, when we have matter transfer between system and surrounding, the composition is changing, and this equation does not account for any compositional change. This equation is obviously a state derived based on equilibrium conditions. So if you have irreversible chemical reaction, then this equation is not valid. This is only for the spontaneous condition, right? Or equilibrium condition or reversible condition. What is the condition? These equations are only for the equilibrium conditions, right? All the thermodynamic equations we have derived so far are all going to be applicable only when they are reaching the new equilibrium state, that is reversibly. So these are all irreversible processes. You cannot find out the delta S, delta G from by using this expression. You need to modify that, and if you want to modify the equation in terms of the matter exchange between the system and surrounding, what you now introduce is a new term known as the chemical potential. This is the fundamental equation which we have in terms of the energies U, H, A and G. Internal energy, enthalpy, Helmholtz energy and Gibbs energy for a closed system. Now how do we account for the change of composition for any reaction? Now let us consider the Gibbs free energy of two components. Two species are present. Okay, suppose salt and water both are present. So two components are present. Now what do I do? I have the expression for the delta. Here what you have here, delta S. What is minus S equal to? Sorry, here. What is minus S equal to? What is S minus S equal to? It's the first differential according to the perfect differential values which we had taken. G equal to mx dx plus n dy. Remember that perfect equation? So if I have to compare that with the perfect equation, what will this S be? This will be the differential of G with respect to temperature at constant volume, a constant pressure.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody who's not with me in this? This is the fundamental equation which we are coming to. Remember when we had done Maxwell's, oh God, when we had done Maxwell's, we had said that if I can write down the total differential in this form, then this is the first differential which we have. This is going to be represented as M, and that is going to be equal to the first term which we are having here. for the corresponding fundamental equation. So if I have to go by the same total differential, what is going to be this value? What is going to be this? If I take delta G, then what is going to be this? This S minus S represents nothing but the change in G with respect to temperature at constant pressure. And what is V? V is the measure of the change in Gibbs energy with respect to pressure at constant temperature, right? So we are monitoring how the total G is changing when G was dependent on two parameters, pressure and temperature. So first you are differentiating with respect to the temperature, keeping all other things constant. And in a closed system, we were not bothered about the number of moles which is exchanged between the system and surrounding. So we always ignored that and kept the number of moles constant. But here, when we are having an open system, what we change is we not only keep the pressure constant, but we keep the moles of all the components present also being a constant. If it's a two component system, then I have moles of 1 and moles of 2. Moles of 1 is constant, moles of 2 is also constant. So what is the first differential which you are going to get if you are having a equation like this? It is going to be S, this minus S is nothing but equal to the change of G with respect to temperature when pressure is constant at the given value of the moles of the two components you are present in the system, suppose the water and salt. Similarly, what will happen to this one? If you compare your fundamental equation, what will happen to this one? I am writing now the total differential of this G value for that particular, for any particular thing. So if I have a variation of G with respect to temperature, I have to multiply with dt, keeping all the other parameters constant, including P. Then I change with P, keeping temperature and all other parameters constant, and multiply by the total change in pressure. Now what we have to account is how the G is changing with the number of moles which is being added or removed. So I say the number of G, change of G with the number of moles of the first component at constant temperature and the other moles of the other being fixed, then that is going to be the chemical defined as the chemical potential of that substance as let us say mu1. Similarly, I have two components as I have stated. So the G should change with the composition of the second component as well. So here you see what I have written, the change of G with respect to N2, the number of moles, and that has to be carried out at constant temperature and pressure, keeping N1 constant, and the total differential is dN2. Can you write down this, all of you? These are the coming from the fundamental equation. Am I clear? This is nothing. This is nothing but how the G is changing with temperature at constant pressure. This is nothing but how G is changing with pressure at constant temperature. Right? You have these two terms. Compare the partial differential with the expressions we are right now doing. Now what we have to account for being an open system, the G changing with number of moles. So you just see temperature and pressure being constant and the other mole also being constant. You differentiate the G with respect to the number of moles of one mole of the gas, and here what we have say N2 being the second component. I keep for this I keep changing with the N2 and keep the first component fixed. And what will this become? This will become mu2. So change in variation of G with the second component, moles of the second component, keeping all other constant parameters constant, including the moles of the other component, into the total change in the moles of the component is going to be defined as the mu2. Right, and if I have I number of species if I have, then I can write this portion as summation of the chemical potential of the ith species into the change in number of moles of the ith species when I is equal to 1 and I is not equal to j, and it is going to n number of particles. So I can rewrite this fundamental equation in the modified form for an open system. Am I clear? Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, what we have here, just for your thing, G is supposed to be a component which is extensive. It is depending on the mass. But when we talk about chemical potential, you see it is always defined per mole. How it is changing with moles. So it is actually a intensive property independent of the number of moles. Okay. Now, if you have a pure system, then you do not have variation of other components. We do not have any other component present. This was the one question which I think Nishant had asked. What is the difference between component? Like if I have gas, if I have water, I can have it in liquid, solid and gas phase. Three phases may be there, but the component is only one. It's a pure water. Okay. But if I have salt or if I have ethanol and water, then it's a two component system. Okay. So when I'm having only water, then all of these will change, will vanish. Only will be the change of G with that particular system is going to be considered, and that is usually defined as the chemical potential of the system. And you do not write Ni and Nj for that. Am I clear? This is defined as the chemical potential, but for a pure compound, it is just mu, because you do not have I, J, K, L, M, because it is only one component which is present. Right? So if you want to write down the equation of fundamental equations for all the four systems which you have studied, what will you do? You will change the definition in terms of, instead of G, I can write U, I can write A, I can write H, I can write G. Only thing is, how they are going to be what they are going to be varying with will change. Like for example, look at this. Look at this. This is with in terms of the internal energy. And what is the internal energy equation given to be? Internal energy is given to be du equal to T delta S minus PdV. So if I have to differentiate, I go from the fundamental definition of total differential. Total change in U is nothing but the change in U with respect to the entropy. I said now we have U as a function of entropy and volume, and since it's an open system, it's a function of the number of moles as well. So how the U is changing with the entropy, keeping volume and number of moles of all the species constant, plus how the U is changing with the volume, keeping entropy and all the number of moles of other components fixed into the total change of V, plus what you have, how the U is changing with the number of moles of each species at constant temperature and constant entropy and volume. Okay, when I is not equal to J. Okay, here I have not written, but it is I is not equal to J has to be mentioned, into total change in number of moles of that particular species. Am I clear? So the chemical potential cannot not only be defined for only the Gibbs energy, but it can be the change in any of the thermodynamic potentials, be it entropy, be it internal energy, be it enthalpy, be it Helmholtz energy or Gibbs energy. So these are applicable to single phase, multi-component open system in thermal or mechanical equilibrium with only PV type of work. So these equations are going to be applicable to single phase or multiple phase. Single phase means the component, other components will vanish. Only one component of mu will come in. Only one component of mu will come in. That will be mu, the change of the number of moles of that. But if you are having multi-component, then you have to include the summation and add up all the terms which you are associating with. The chemical potential MQ mu I is the rate of change of the thermodynamic potential with respect to the number of moles of the species. Am I clear? Okay. So now let us take up the various properties of G. various properties of G, chemical potential of a pure substance. When we are talking about a pure substance, there is only one component. It's a special case of n moles of a pure substance. When we are talking about an open system, we are talking about a special case at a given temperature and pressure. What happens? Let us consider n moles of a pure substance at temperature T and the pressure P. That time, by definition, the Gibbs free energy of the system is equal to, just have a look at this, is equal to the Gibbs energy defined at the given temperature, pressure and the number of moles is equal to the N into the Gm, that the molar Gibbs free energy, okay, at that given temperature and pressure, because this is going to be intensive, so it will not depend on the number of moles. This is going to be dependent on number of moles. So number of moles into Gm will be the G. That is very basic. I will not dwell on it. Now, what is chemical potential? Chemical potential for a pure substance is nothing but the molar Gibbs energy for that particular component, because it is varying with only one component, and that is the number of moles of that particular compound. And that means what you are doing G by M. G by N is what? G by N is per mole, and that is the molar energy, molar Gibbs free energy, right? So chemical potential for a pure system is nothing but the molar Gibbs energy, right? So what are the properties of chemical potential? I think I'll take up this in the next class.